Bible message of the week comes from Matthew chapter 12, verses 38 through 42. That's Matthew chapter 12, verses 38 through 42. Now, before we get there, if I were to ask you a question, what is your sign? You would probably immediately go to the horoscopes. You are either a Pisces or a Gemini or Cancer, Sagittarius, whatever it is your birth sign is. You probably had that response already. But these, of course, horoscopes, astrology, is a sign of the occult. But we'll get to more to that later. But Matthew chapter 12, 38 through 42 says that then some of the scribes and Pharisees said to him, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you." But he answered and said to them, "An evil and adulterous generation craves for a sign, and yet no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah the prophet. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the sea monster, so will the Son of Man be there 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And the men of Nineveh will stand up with this generation at the judgment and will condemn it, because they repented of the preaching of Jonah, and behold, something greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up with this generation at the judgment and will condemn it, because she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, something greater than Solomon is here." Now, there are also, along with these signs of the zodiac, there are signs of expectation. For example, when people look to government, they mostly look for signs of positive change. They look for signs of common sense. They look for signs that they know what they're doing. And this is the typical hope in elected officials. But this is the wrong kind of hope, because they are looking for the wrong signs and the wrong things. There are also signs of superstition. We believe that superstitious signs can tell us what we want to know. For example, itching nose means something new. Itching palms, on the other hand, means that money is on the way. A cat washing over its ears means a visitor. A dog eating grass is a sign of rain. The ace and the queen of spades signify death. A knife sticking in the floor means disaster. A ringing in the ears means either bad news or someone is talking about you. So we, of course, go on and on and on. And even on our trips to Africa, we encounter a whole myriad of superstitious signs that we can't get into, and time won't permit us. But instead of looking for signs and things that give us false hope, the world should be looking for signs of Christ's return. And this is where our real hope lies. And in our passage this morning, it tells us this. It says, while the unbelieving world looks for signs, the only sign needed is in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. In the end, the believing world will judge the non-believers when it is time for the whole world to stand before him. You see, people who don't know Jesus seem to always be looking for a sign. Then it says in verse 36, then some of the scribes and Pharisees said to him, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you." Now, ultimately, signs are something people look for when they don't have anything else to believe in. Jesus broke down the objections of the scribes and the Pharisees until they had nothing left. First, the Pharisees and scribes confronted Jesus about healing on the Sabbath, and Jesus responded, "I am the Lord of the Sabbath." They then accused Jesus of being from Satan because he cast out demons. Jesus responded, in effect, this is just a ridiculous excuse to accuse me. Either you are with me or against me. But clearly your words tell me that you are who you are. Now, the Pharisees then said, well, if you are who you say you are, then give us a sign. But because they didn't believe. They wanted a sign that they could relate to. But we should not look for the meaning in the things of the world. We should not look for understanding in the things of the world. You see, you will only find confusion in the spiritual things of the world. You only find confusion in things such as horoscopes and crystals and divination and dream books, or even in things like transcendental meditation. There's only confusion in those things because they don't solve what you need them to solve. You only find disappointment in the financial things of the world. Money can never provide happiness. It can only do so much. You will only find self-interest in the political things of the world because political parties are not out for you. They are out for themselves, and you will only find disappointment. The only sign we need, therefore, is in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. In verses 39 through 40, it says, "But he answered and said to them, An evil and adulterous generation craves for a sign, and yet no sign will be given them, but the sign of Jonah the prophet. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the sea monster, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." The fact that anyone looks for some sign other than the sign of Jesus Christ is the same as adultery against God. See, looking for something else offends God. Looking for something else is hurtful. Looking for some other sign calls upon God to display his anger in the same way that any spouse would do if they got caught in their cheating. See, God has revealed himself to mankind in 2 ways. First, through what's called general revelation. We see this in Romans chapter 1, verse 20. "For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power, his divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse." What Jesus is hinting at is that Joseph's experience, or should I say Jonah's experience, was also a kind of general revelation. And because the scribes and the Pharisees are fully aware of this, they too are without excuse. They too are an adulterous generation because this sign is going to point to exactly who Jesus is. But not only the sign of Jonah, the sign of Jesus' resurrection is everywhere in creation. This is what's called specific revelation. You see, the sign of the resurrection is in the chrysalis of the caterpillar. The sign of the resurrection is in the seed that falls to the ground. The sign of the resurrection is in the sun that comes up in the morning. It's in the very notion of forgiveness. It is in the conservation of energy. It's in the healing of the broken body. The sign of the resurrection is setting free of the prisoner. The sign of the resurrection is the very idea of righteousness. You see, the resurrection of Jesus is so ingrained into the fabric of creation that in the end, only those believers in him will stand before God. In verses 41 through 42, it says, "The men of Nineveh will stand up with this generation at the judgment and will condemn it because they repented at the preaching of Jonah. And behold, something greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up with this generation at the judgment and will condemn it because she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, something greater than Solomon is here." See, so those who heard the preaching of Jonah believed and were saved. They were Gentiles of great slaughter. They were a people of idolatry and sin. Now, even though Jesus was greater than the preaching of Jonah, the Jews who accused him did not believe. The queen of Ethiopia was a Gentile who was so impressed by Solomon's God that she believed. And even though Jesus is greater than the wisdom of Solomon, still the Jews did not believe. It must have infuriated the Pharisees when Jesus said the Gentiles whom they hated would stand up in the judgment and condemn the scribes and the Pharisees. You see, Jesus made a way for all of this to happen. And so those who are condemned by the world today will judge this world in the end. See, one day those who are oppressed for righteousness' sake will judge their oppressors. One day those at the end of the line will overtake those at the front. One day those who reject the obvious Jesus will be judged by him. One day the last shall become first, and the small shall become great. They might lie on you today, but tomorrow the truth will come to light. They might abuse you today, but you will judge them tomorrow. They might have their glory today, but they will have the fire tomorrow. If you know who Jesus is, you can rejoice. If you know who Jesus is, you can clap your hands. If you know who Jesus is, you can laugh in the face of trials. If you know who Jesus is, you can rejoice in the face of sorrow. If you know who Jesus is, even when you are weighed down by a load of grief, you can have joy. You can have peace. You can have contentment because you know who Jesus is. Because even though worms may destroy your physical body, in the end you will stand in your flesh and you shall see God. See, because the sign of the resurrection is the only sign that you need. The empty tomb is the only sign that you need. Jesus coming out of the grave is the only sign that you need. The stone that was rolled away is the only sign that you need. You see, unbelievers, unbelieving worlds are always looking for some sign or another. But we encourage you today not to look for meaning in the things of the world. Not look for your meaning in the signs of the world. The only sign needed is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You see, the sign of Jesus is everywhere in creation. You see, we don't need to be at the tomb itself. That sign is everywhere in creation, even in the environmental transformation that it is in the microscopic DNA of our creation. It is in the conservation of momentum. It is everywhere. It is in the conservation of energy. That sign of the resurrection is in every aspect of creation. So in the end, only those who believe in him will stand before God. You see, those who are condemned by the world today will one day judge the world. We look at people as if they are somehow less, but I'm reminded that it only takes a little work in order, or faithfulness in a few things, to have great power in many things. I'm reminded that you don't have to do a lot to be a lot in the eyes of God. So while the unbelieving world looks for signs, the only sign needed is in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And ultimately, the believing world will judge non-believers when it is time for the whole world to stand before him. I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast today. I don't know where you are in your faith, but I encourage you to give your life to Christ. I encourage you to believe in him, in the power of his resurrection. And all you need to do is call on him to save your life. The The Bible says, whoever calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. And we encourage you to call upon him today. Now, we're going to leave you today. I'm going to leave you, and hopefully and prayerfully that we'll be together next week. But if not, we'll be together in heaven. So we want to leave you with a song from Yolanda Adams called In the Midst of It All. God bless you.